Hello, thank you so much for joining me for part 6 of the series, I Want More. And we're looking at Hebrews chapter 11 and working through it, looking about how we can fight sin by wanting more, desiring more of what God can give us rather than settling for what the world can give us. And today we're going to kind of go back to a character we skipped over before and look at Noah and wanting more rest. And so as we think about rest, I want you to think of a family vacation that you were disappointed with. For me, it was last year, probably the worst family vacation that my family has had. And so we went to Wilderness State Park up in north and by Mackinac. And so we went up there and really excited for his 3-day camping trip and to just enjoy life, get away from the busyness, be together, and enjoy God's creation. And when we got there, we were excited and we got out of our car at our campsite, and immediately we were being eaten alive by these killer flies. I mean, these things were biting us and they were huge. I'd never seen anything like it, and they were just attacking us, especially my son Zeke, who was only 2 at the time, attacking his face, and just he had no way to stop them. And so we went ahead and we were spraying ourselves with bug spray. We got at the camp and we were trying to set up our tents, and then it started raining, which gave us a little bit of relief from the flies, but we were soaked. And so we were trying to start a fire in this. We started a fire. It wasn't very good, so we ate hot dogs, and we were eating our hot dogs sort of under a tree, getting wet, eaten by flies. We got into our tent late that night, just wanting some relief and hoping tomorrow maybe it'll be a better day. And so that night, though, it rained and rained. And out of all the campsites around us, ours was the only one that woke up, that we had 8 inches of water. We had like 6 or 8 inches of water that were just all through our entire campsites. And one of the people came by and was like, yeah, they should never have given you this site if you're using a tent. It's like, thanks for letting us know. So all this water rushed into our tent in the middle of the night, got all of our clothes and blankets and just everything soaked. And so everything was soaked, and we decided to throw our hands up, give up, and just go home. This was way too stressful. And so we went ahead and packed everything up after just being there a few hours, like just for one night, and packed it all up and went home. We will never forget that family vacation. It is by far one of the worst we had. And yet, it was something we can look back on and be like, you know, we didn't get the rest we were hoping for. So often we go on vacation and we want rest. We work for a week and we come to a weekend and we want to just chill. We want to rest and get away from the work and stress of life. But so often, how many of us have been disappointed with the vacations we had, been wanting rest but not be able to receive it. And so stress and work and things just come at us, and maybe it was unmet expectations or arguments that happen and bickering among the family or just things not working out the way we hoped. And so instead of it being this relaxing time, it ends up being this very stressful time. It was like, it would have been better just to stay home anyways. When we think about rest, we often think, rest is the exact opposite of work. But rest actually comes when we work in the right way, with the right focus. Notice what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, if you would have heard that, you would have been like, whoa, Jesus, all right, you're saying come to you and you'll give me rest, but then you're saying your yoke is easy? Why do you have a yoke? Yoke is something that 2 oxen or 2 cattle would be hooked up to. And they would be kind of connected at the neck to each other so that they could stay together as they plow a farm or something. It would help them, they would be able to do more work together, and they would be stronger together and be able to accomplish a lot more. A yoke was something that you used when you were working. And Jesus says, come to me if you want rest. I'll give you rest. Here, get in my yoke. And it's like, wait, I don't want to work. I want to rest. But Jesus is saying this, when you work with me, when you're attached to me, I carry the heavy load. I do the grunt of the work. You just got to stay in step with me. Keep walking next to me. Keep in with me. Learn from me. And he says, I'm gentle and humble and I'm lowly of spirit. And this will be something that will be good for you and it'll be rest for your souls. And so what's amazing with that is we find rest when we are working with Jesus Christ. When we work with God and work in step with Jesus Christ, we find rest for our souls. And this is what I see is so true of the life of Noah. Noah teaches us that rest comes when you work to prepare for 2 times. That rest comes when you work to prepare for 2 times. And so rest is something you have to prepare for. And that preparation takes a lot of work. But when we prepare for it in the right way, in the way that Jesus Christ desires us to, and keeping in step with Him when we work with Him, it's not this hard, burdensome thing. It's this thing that gives us rest for our very souls. And so let's look at this in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. It says, by faith, Noah, when he was warned about the things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. And so first it says that God warned him, that he was warned about the things not yet seen. And because he was warned, he built an ark. So he teaches us that rest comes when we work to prepare for God's judgment. Rest comes when we work to prepare for God's judgment. God warned Noah that he was going to judge the world with the coming flood, that there had never been rain on the earth before, and yet he was going to send the springs of the waters from the ground of the earth and release the rain from the heavens of the earth and just flood the entire world because of the wickedness of the world. It says that every person's intentions of their heart, everything that was filling in every single person's heart was full of sin and evil, except Noah. Noah is described as a righteous man who walked with God, who was blameless in everything he did. And so you look at Noah as a complete contrast and completely different to the rest of the people around him. And God warned him of this coming judgment. He believed God. He was fully convinced that what God said was going to happen. And therefore he built an ark. He worked. He got to work to build this ark. And he obeyed God in that. The rest of the people around Noah didn't work like that. They didn't work in preparation for God's judgment. They were working for the weekend. They were working for an early retirement. They were working to enjoy life to the fullest. And their work ended abruptly. It ended when God's judgment came. And so they were working for something so limited, for the here and now, instead of for eternity and with God's judgment in view. But Noah's work was completely different. His work was with God's judgment in view. He built the ark because he knew everything that was going to happen, that he could work on, was going to be wiped out. It was going to be destroyed. The only thing that would last would be the thing that God preserved, and that was the ark, and everyone inside the ark. And so that's what he worked for. He worked for the thing that God commanded him to. He followed God's advice and got God's command to build this ark. Jesus gives a parable illustrating this really well, and he says this in Luke chapter 12. Jesus gives this parable starting in verse 16. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus of grain. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. And so Jesus here gives us a warning. Look, if you work for the weekend, if you work for the here and now, and just for this moment, it's going to end abruptly. It's going to end abruptly, and it's not going to last for eternity. God's judgment is going to come on you. Are you ready? And God has warned us of another coming judgment, not a flood. He said he would never do that, but of his coming judgment on the earth, of his wrath, of a fire, it says, that will burn up this world. Are we ready for this judgment? Are we working for just the here and now, for our own life? Are we working in view that God's judgment is coming, and that what we do needs to be in step with God so it lasts, and so that it matters, and it has meaning and purpose? And when you work that way, it's not as burdensome. It's restful, because you're walking in step with Jesus Christ. The next point that we see is that rest comes when we work in preparation for God's salvation. Rest comes when we work in preparation for God's salvation. See, it describes Noah as, because he believed God, his faith motivated his work, and his work to build the ark. And it says this, that at the end of verse 7, that by his faith he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with the faith. He became an heir. An heir is somebody who receives an inheritance. And an inheritance is something you can only receive, not earn. It is something that is given to you and that you do not work for. And so the Bible, Noah is the very first person in the Bible called righteous, called blameless. And God calls him this in the very beginning. Before he judges the world, before Noah ever obeys, or before he begins to build this ark, he's described as a person who walks with God and is righteous. See, God declared Noah righteous, not because of what he was going to do or what he did, but because of his faith in him. God declared Noah righteous because of Noah's faith. And so Noah, God said, Noah, I'm bringing this judgment, but I'm going to save your family. Now, I want you to build an ark. And Noah obeyed God, not in order to be saved. He was already saved. But he obeyed God because God had promised to save him. His obedience flowed from the promise of salvation. It flowed from him already receiving this. God said, Noah, you're righteous. Now, and I'm going to save you. Noah's like, great. Let me follow you. Let me obey you. And so he begins to build this ark. It took him something between 70 to 100 years in order to build this ark. That's a long time on working on one project. And yet, he worked at it tirelessly, but he didn't do it worrying that God's judgment was going to come sooner, before he got the project done. He wasn't like, man, I got to get this done today because maybe it won't come tomorrow. Well, maybe God's judgment will come tomorrow and I won't have this done in time. He wasn't worried about that. God had promised him salvation, so he's like, I want to do this work, I'm going to do it well, I'm going to do it right, and because I want this to be successful. And so he wasn't worried because God had already given him a promise. And so he became this heir of righteousness. And because he received God's righteousness, he built the ark, and he believed God, and that caused his obedience. His work was driven out of a love for God, not out of a desire to earn something from God. And we see this pictured in our salvation, Ephesians chapter 2. It says, for it is by grace that you have been saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And so it describes to us that you're saved by grace. This is a gift of God that He's given to you. And so you're not saved by any work that you do. It's nothing that you can boast about. But because you're saved, God has lined up work for you. He is creating you. He's working in you to work, to accomplish the purposes He has for you, that He has set up for you. So go do them, because you already know you're saved. You already know that you're secure and that you are receiving this eternal rest with God. So go enjoy the work and go do it well. I find that, so interesting that our work needs to be motivated by God's work for us. Jesus Christ had the greatest work to do. He had the hardest work to do, and that was in saving us from our sins. And He came to earth, and He lived the life we never could, and He worked, and He did everything He did. Every person He healed, every message He gave, everywhere He went, everything He did, it was keeping in step with His Father. He obeyed in a way we never could. And when He was hanging on the cross and God had poured His wrath on Him for my sins, and Jesus is paying for my sins, He says these words, "It is finished." The work is done. The price has been paid. It is complete. It's over. And so the work that Jesus Christ did in saving my soul, He accomplished. He did that work, not me. And He finished that work, not me. And because He did that, He then says, "Come, take my yoke, and I'll carry the burden with you, and let's work together. And I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you to do." As you're thinking about your careers and what you're going to do in college and what you're going to do after college, what your life is going to look like, it might be confusing to you. It might be overwhelming to you. But I want you to understand something, that is not something that's just left to you to do. You're not alone in that. But when you follow Jesus Christ, He will lead you every step of the way. He may not give you the big picture of what your life is going to look like, and it might change drastically over the years all the time. And so this isn't something you can necessarily prepare for, but what you can do is realize God's judgment is coming, so I need to make sure what I do will last for eternity. Focus on people. Focus on the work of God, not what everyone else is doing and living for the weekend and trying to gain the best, most comfortable life or have the most vacations or extravagant times. Those times may have been restful for their body a little bit, but they probably left a little discouraged and wanting a little bit more rest. But Jesus Christ offers us rest for our souls. And He says, you get rest from your souls when you work with me, when you come alongside of me. And then He pictures in the book of Hebrews, towards the chapter 2 and 3, it talks about rest, being with God in eternity. And so we have the hope, because of Jesus Christ dying for us, of enjoying the greatest vacation ever when we see Him. So work hard now, and it won't be a burdensome work. It won't be a work that you will have to be stressed out about. It's a work that you walk along Jesus Christ with, accomplishing the purposes He has designed for you and prepared for you to do. And it's out of a desire of saying, because you saved me and you've done this work for me and in me, I'm now going to, out of love for you, obey you, walk with you, and stay with you. That's the idea. That's how Noah became an heir of righteousness. And then it says it condemned the world around him. Everyone looked at him and said, "Noah, you're weird. What are you doing? You're so different. Why would you do this? It makes absolutely no sense." And he says, "Well, what you're doing makes no sense to me. We have a flood coming. It's going to be destroyed. Your life you're living like isn't going to last." And they're probably mocking him, saying, "No way, what you're doing is ridiculous." And he says, "No, what I'm doing will last forever." And so a man named Rest, worked hard and worked differently for 70 to 100 years. but he enjoyed that rest. He received that rest, not in this world, but when he went to be with Jesus Christ. He found rest and rest for his souls. And even during the work of the ark, it wasn't a burdensome work. It was a work that he was able to find meaning and purpose in, and that he saved not only himself, but his entire household. You know, this is a picture of Jesus Christ. That when we are in him, just as Noah was in the ark, that we are saved because Jesus Christ is our ark. He is our salvation that preserves us from the judgment of God. He took God's judgment in my place so I don't have to suffer that. And so I can enjoy rest with him. If you have not trusted in Jesus Christ as your Savior, to be your righteousness for you, to make you right with God, will you do that? Will you turn to him? Will you believe on him? Maybe go through Ephesians chapter 2, the first 10 verses, and read through that. And look at what it means to be saved and what it means to be right with God, and how this is a gift given to you by him. And then enjoy the rest of God. Come to me, Jesus says, and I will give you rest. A rest that is far better than any vacation you could ever take here. And enjoy the vacation God has for you in all of eternity with him. It is far better. And so I pray this was an encouragement to you, for your parents, in your work and in even your worry of when am I going to get back to work or how those things are going to work out, realize God has a plan for you, and he's taking care of you. Walk with him. Do what he has for you today. And then for kids, you know, for students, go ahead and think about your future might be very uncertain right now, but realize that God has a purpose for your life. He has a job for you to accomplish, but it just takes you walking with him each step of the way. And as you do that, you will find rest for your souls that'll be far better than anything you could work for yourself. So, well, I hope this was an encouragement to you, and have a great week. We'll see each other soon.